Hey, this is Ariel, and you're listening to the Cyber PR Music Podcast, dispatches for the new music business. Hello, on this episode of the Cyber PR Music Podcast, I am thrilled and delighted to welcome Kristin Yasuda. Kristin Yasuda is the Director of Artist Partnerships at Bandsintown, which has over 500,000 musicians who use the platform to promote local shows and tours. And I meet and talk to hundreds of artists a year who all have profiles on Bandsintown, but very few really understand the power of the free tools that are available and what they can do to market and promote themselves in a more effective manner. So, Kristin, I would love to have you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your past. I know you've done a lot of things in and around the music space, and bring us up to speed about what it is you do at Bandsintown.
Yeah, I will give you kind of like the shortened version. I've probably been everywhere around the block in the music industry. I've been with Bandsintown now, I would say just a little over 2 years. Right before that, I was in radio for almost 7 years, Radio Disney specifically. So I was programming the pop and country station, well, also the junior station as well. And then before that, I was at Jive Records for a year and a half. So I've touched upon, the label. I was doing A&R promotions, publicity, then went over to radio and programming. Also did a little bit of talent booking. And now I'm over here at Bandsintown, which is like artist partnerships and tour marketing. The great thing is I've touched upon so many different things and now I can bring it over here and I'm not limited to any certain type of artist or a specific genre. Like I can literally work with anyone, which is great, indie, major, US or international. So I would say, what I do right now is I head up the artist partnerships team here in LA. But I do travel out to pretty much all the other markets. So you'll always see me or hear that I'm in like Nashville, New York, Austin, we have offices in San Diego and Montreal, but I am artist facing. So I'm working with the artists, their managers, labels, especially the agents right now, educating them on how they can market themselves more than their tour dates. So how an artist can use our tools all year round to promote their music, merch, tours, of course, contesting, music videos, just anything that they want.
So I'm really excited to dive into what you're saying right now because there are many parts of Bandsintown, and as my team and I are helping to bring content to the Bandsintown artists blog, we've realized there's a lot to unpack. And for those of you who don't know, Bandsintown has over 50 million registered music fans who use the app, who are looking to buy tickets and find out about live events. And part of the secret at Bandsintown is that independent artists, not the huge superstars, although they are a big part of the platform, are the ones that can benefit tremendously from using the self-serve platform, which is free. So, Kristin, where should an artist start if they maybe don't have a fully updated profile, or if they do, but they haven't checked in on their profile in quite some time?
I always direct everyone to go to manager.bandsintown.com. And then from there, it's really simple. You can see it on the screen. It's going to tell you how to log in and claim your page, whether you have before or it's someone new that's managing your page. You can do it now through your email or, before it was only through your Facebook if you had the admin rights. But now there's a bunch of other methods that you can do. So it's manager.bandsintown.com.
And once you get in there and you claim your profile, and obviously you would update your photos and your information, your social links, and just make sure that all the information like your bio is updated, what is the next thing to do?
I always tell artists, whether you are on tour or not, after you update your Bandsintown page, if you have an official website, definitely install the widget on there because even if you don't have dates, it's going to have that track button. every artist, you get the most traffic on official website, more than your socials, just because I think fans trust that that's where real information is coming from. And for any fan that goes there and does click on that track button, you're going to get those fans that you can message anytime about anything that you want after. So I would say you gain trackers the fastest by having that plugin.
So the track this artist goes right on your website. And then if your fans are coming to your website and they're interested in finding out, where you're going to be playing, one benefit I always say about having this feature is for those artists that are overwhelmed with their newsletter and having to send out their newsletter, create their newsletter, this Bandsintown is basically telling all of your fans when you're going to come to their area, all about the details for your shows, where your shows are, and there's ticketing links. So even if you do have a great newsletter and you're good at updating it and you've parsed it out and you're sending it to the right people, Bandsintown is working on overdrive to help your fans understand where you're coming to play. So this is an incredibly powerful thing to do. The other thing is I know there's also a Facebook plugin, and I love the Facebook interface. I think it's an easy tab that goes on your Facebook page. I know it's exhausting having to go and update all your events and your dates. And Bandsintown, obviously, you put it in one place and it goes to both your website and your Facebook.
And essentially, it's kind of like, I like to think that Bandsintown, we become kind of like your mailing list. So we're capturing those fans and those opt-ins for you, think about it. Because every new tracker is someone then that you can message on our platform versus setting that up on your own.
So when you say message on the platform, um, what are some good types of messaging that you can send to your fans through Bands in Town? What have you seen that really works for bands and artists?
And I do want to say, because I know we were talking about it earlier, if people hear us or anyone else on the team reference posted trackers, that's what we mean. It's posted trackers is the same as messaging your fans through Bandsintown. I always say, because it's getting sent out as a push notification and an email for those that had opted in, the push is going to look like it's coming from you as the artist, not someone from on your team. So it's very personal. It's going to look like so-and-so just sent you a message to view, click here to view in the app. So you kind of want to put it in your own voice. That's what I always recommend. And fans love getting that. They can see right through it when it's someone else on the team, when it's very scripted. But I always recommend, do it in your own voice, make it short, put a picture in there. You can only put in one right now. You can put a link. So I always recommend that. But definitely make it feel personal. But in terms of what you should be messaging them, obviously announce new tour dates, announce pre-sales, tease something like something's coming, whether that's new music, a new music video, EP, or album. I also know that pre-orders and pre-saves are very popular right now, and especially merchandise, just because someone that is a tracker has the intention of going to a show. So of course they're going to be interested in your merch.
Amazing. So how often is a good clip? Like how often should people be communicating with their fans on this platform? Is it too much to do it too often? Like, do you have a certain amount of times, like a month, that you recommend artists work on? Like, what's your recommendation there?
I would say, or we can start off with, don't post more than once a week unless it's for a tour announcement. Just because the fan is getting the message as so and so sent you a message, they don't see it yet. If they are getting one every day, they might assume it's the same thing. And you're going to see where the open rate just goes down. Because I'm sure we're all the same way, if we're getting an email from the same person once a day, you're less inclined to open it probably, by the end of the week. Unless it's tied to a tour announcement, of course, do announce it on that Monday or Tuesday. Send out the post when you have a pre-sale on that Wednesday or Thursday. And of course, the general on sale on a Friday. Anything else, I would recommend doing it once a week at the most. but definitely use the tool all year round.
So, as they're using the tool, I know that Bandsintown has pretty recently rolled out what they refer to as VIP features, which are more hardy features on the Bandsintown platform. Can you walk us through some of the highlights of those features and what their capabilities are?
Yeah, actually, this is what I've been waiting to get created forever, and I'm so excited about it. First, the VIP features, they are free, but it is for artists that are first with 10,000 or less trackers. So, our idea behind that was to support baby artists and help their careers grow. Just, most of the time they don't have a team behind them, but they do want access to the tools that, you know, artists signed to majors have. So they will have that automatically. The other way you can have access to these features is if you are using our plugin on your website. So that could be our widget API, or through the integration with Wix or Squarespace. So you will see that as soon as you log in. It does look like the lock emoji. It will be unlocked. And then, of course, if you don't have access, you click on it and it will take you directly to the toolbox and how you can install. But I would say the biggest feature that everyone loves is the geo-targeted posted trackers. So you can geo-target your messages. What you do is you put in any city, and it kind of like, I call it like a calculator on the side, but it's really just like a radius bar. But you can put in the city and then put in your radius, and it's going to tell you how many trackers you could reach in that city. And then you can adjust it to your liking. And then, of course, you can send out a message, and now you can schedule it, which is great because you could never do it before. And that, I think that's been really helpful for a lot of artists that are trying to send out certain messages in specific time zones.
So what she's basically saying, if you're not super familiar with the platform, and it is really exciting, is everybody knows that they should be parsing out their newsletter list. And this is something that if you've listened to me over the years, or Cheryl Engelhart, who's the amazing guru in our space for how to do your newsletter the right way, she always talks about parsing. In other words, like if you're a touring artist, you keep and maintain a list for every area that you're touring in, so that if you're going to Chicago but you're from LA, you don't tell everyone in LA that you're playing in Chicago, because really only the people there are going to care. So Bandsintown essentially does this for you. So you can post by geo-targeting to whatever city, only to your fans that are in Chicago or in New York or in Nashville or wherever it is you're going to play. And this is a great way of also ensuring that you're not wearing down your newsletter list and overwhelming them with like, okay, I'm coming to play Dubuque, when they might not care about that at all. So for those of you that have a newsletter, and that's another part of your marketing strategy, you can save your newsletter to announce the whole tour, but you can use Bandsintown to geo-target very specifically those fans that have opted in to follow you on the
Yeah.
Bandsintown platform.
And I think I get the one question I get from a lot of teams when the tour is about to launch is there'll be certain markets that obviously need help selling tickets. So this is great. And I always recommend, hit up those fans a couple days before that show, because we all know people only buy tickets on the on sale or the night before or the day of. So this is always a great reminder, because most people, when they see that tour announcement and they say interested or RSVP, I would say, most of the time, a lot of them did not buy a ticket at that moment. It was just a reminder to self, but definitely send out that geo-targeted posted trackers, expand the radius, like go outside of the city, because a lot of times people travel in. So I would definitely say if you have a full tour coming up, send this out, 2 to 3 nights before each date.
Very cool. So what else is on the VIP suite of features that can be utilized?
In addition to the posting, we did enhance the insights. So insights is another tab when you're inside Bandsintown for artists, and this is all your stats. So what was already there is you could see how many trackers you had and where they're located. It would show your growth over time in terms of trackers, your RSVPs, your ticket clicks. But because we added the geo-targeted feature, that is now in your insights. So you're going to see how many fans you reached and the number of views. And that shows up 48 hours after you send the post. It's all in there. The other thing that we added is Play My City. So that is another button that is on your widget if you have it installed. It is on the Bandsintown app on your page there. And then if you take the events promotion page, which I know we're going to talk about, it's a button at the bottom of that. So what a fan does is they can click Ask to Play in My City. And what we do is we capture what city that fan is registered in, typically off of their Facebook, if that's how they sign in. And then we're going to feed you that data. And this is great for artists that, you know, you're thinking of adding a second leg, or you're going to go on tour, but you don't know what city to go to. You know, tell your fans to ask to play in my city. And then you're going to get all of that in your insights page. And then you can actually see, you know, where your fans are located.
Amazing. So yes, I do want to talk about that page. How did you know? So another sort of new upgrade at Bandsintown that's just rolled out is the capability to have short links, which is really exciting. And those short links are connected to what is called the events promotion page. And the events promotion page is an easy way to promote all your shows and facilitate your ticket sales because it can be shared with a QR code or with a little short link. So, how are the best ways to use this events promotion page?
Yeah, I would say, well, the one that I like the most, and I wish I could show you just because it looks really great as an Instagram story swipe up. So I always recommend, you know, I always say take your tour artwork, but of course you can use any image that you want. Plug in this link as your swipe up. And then for the fan, it's so easy and it formats to whatever device they're looking on. And it's going to have your track button at the top, you know, all your events, all your buttons right there. And then, of course, at the bottom, the Ask to Play in My City. But it's so easy for the user. And they click on it and it goes directly to the ticket links. And at the same time, you know, any fan that doesn't already track you on social media followers are going to convert into new trackers. Mostly every artist has a bigger following on their socials than they do on Bandsintown. So this is also a really great way to convert them into new trackers.
Very, very cool. So, you can also share this link on any social channel. So, if Facebook is your jam, or if you're big on Twitter, this little short link that you put anywhere will expand into a displayed page that shows the information about the tour, the dates, and then of course it has all of the ticket links on it. So it's an incredibly powerful way to share all of these things really quickly. And I think the reason why you would want to share this events promotion page is because of that capability. I think a lot of times if you're sharing like a Facebook invitation, or if you're sharing like, okay, here's a link to all of my tour dates, it doesn't actually have the ticket link. So it's really important and easy. It's just an easy way of sharing this and getting your fans to understand, like sort of training them to go and click on ticket links.
Yeah. And I would say for anyone that wants to see a few examples, we're very active now on our Instagram and we're posting Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays using other artist links.
So you can see how they're doing it and get a sense of, what is the most effective way to lay out your pages and to display your information. So, are there any other features that you'd like to let artists know about that you think are useful? I would, of course, love to point out there is a new blog that artists can come to if you want to read more in depth, and I will put a link to that in the show notes. You can find a lot of information at artists.bandsintown.com. But is there anything else that you think they should know about?
You know, in addition to promoting your events, I see artists will post book tours as an event, which, we see them doing at Barnes and Noble all the time, or meet and greets. Other artists will send out messages promoting, hey, vote for me on the People's Choice Award. They promote their award season that's coming up, like pretty much around the corner, or any other voting platform. They put that link in there. I've also seen other people promote their streaming links a minute before it happens. Just because you're sending out a push notification and an email, it's going directly to the fans. So I thought that was really smart. We are getting into a lot of contesting just because we have tools that you can use on any platform. So ticket giveaways are very big. Merch bundles do really well. And the other thing that a lot of artists have been doing with us are pre-sales, just because when you send out a pre-sale code as opposed to tracker, it's going to the fan, versus if you were to tweet that code out to the world, you don't know who's getting it, how many tickets they're buying, So those have been really successful for us lately. Another part of Bandsintown that I think a lot of artists don't realize is we have our promoter platform. So you can expand your reach by reaching fans of similar artists, which is great because then you can also convert them into new trackers for yourself.
And so, in other words, like if you feel like you sound like a specific artist, or you've opened for a certain artist, or you're on tour with a certain artist, you can message the fans of that specific artist and target them, and the fans that have opted in to follow those artists will begin to get messages and emails about you and what
Right.
you're up to.
Yes, I think that is great for new artists. When you're trying to promote yourself and get your music out there and no one knows who you are, but you feel like you sound like someone else, I definitely recommend using the promoter tool.
Very cool. Is there anything else that I've left out that artists should know about? You and I are going to be hosting a webinar for Bandsintown for artists, and I will put the webinar up in the show notes. It probably already will have happened by the time this episode of the podcast goes live. But if you want to have Kristin walk you through a more visual experience, she's going to be doing screen sharing and clicking through the platform. So for those of you who have felt a little overwhelmed by all of the different features that we've talked about here, it will be really helpful to visually see what's going on. And then the other thing that we will also do is in the show notes and on the page, which you can find at cyberprmusic.com, there's a podcast link at the very top of the page, and all the episodes are located on the podcast page. I will have a link, and you can see some screenshots which will articulate all of the different things we just talked about: how to post to trackers, how to update your profile, and some links to some really useful how-to articles which will walk you through how to install the widget, as well as how to connect your events landing page to all of your social channels. So again, this is a really powerful tool that very few artists take full advantage of, which is the reason why I wanted to have Kristin on the show today to walk us through these features. They are all free, unless, of course, you opt in to work with Promoter. You never have to do that, unlike some other platforms that force you to pay them in order to reach the fans that you've worked so hard to gather. Names will not be mentioned, but it's one thing I do love about Bandsintown is that Bandsintown makes their money because they help sell tickets, and they're not making their money because they're wanting artists to pay for every move they make on the platform. So I think that's one refreshing approach that they have in the industry, and one of the reasons why I not only recommend it to a lot of the artists that come to work with us, but I'm also thrilled and excited to be spreading the gospel of what Bandsintown for Artists is all about. Kristin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
so if someone is stuck or caught up, or they're having trouble understanding, how can they get in touch with the Bandsintown support team?
I would say the easiest is, send a message directly. It's support@bandsintown.com. Of course, I always recommend logging in first We do have the toolkit in there, but if anything is confusing or you just have a simple question, definitely reach out to them and they respond very quickly.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
This podcast is brought to you by our friends at Bandzoogle. Built by musicians for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a beautiful website for your music. Enter the code CYBER15 to get your first month absolutely free.